In today's podcast of Data for All, AI for All. Welcome to the Data for All podcast. I'm Charlie Apigian.
And I'm Charlie Yielding, where we want to empower you to think different with data.
And on today's podcast, we're talking with our good friend, Shauna Sprague. And Shauna, we want you to tell us a little bit about what you've been doing since our last podcast. And I hear there's some big news.
There is some big news coming up. Just like Data for All wants to empower everyone in their podcast. Mm-hmm. Well, I've got a new podcast coming out with Charlie Yielding, where we're going to do AI for All, and we're going to go over all that fun stuff: ChatGPT, Lambda, Claude, Bard, all those things you've heard about, and we're going to break them down into small, digestible pieces so that you can understand and follow along with us.
Heck yeah, we are.
Yeah.
Excellent. And there's not just AI for All. There's also some other things that you're doing.
Yeah. And then I personally have a website, FemLogic.ai.
And that's Fem, F-E-M, Logic, correct?
FemLogicAI.com.
Okay.
And so when you go to FemLogicAI.com, you'll see my list of consulting services, but there's also going to be a series of smaller videos with tools and there's thousands of AI tools out there. And I want to empower everyone, whether you're technical or not, or you think you're too old, or your child wants to learn. I want to start everybody at zero from here's how you install it, here's how you get it going, and here's how it can save you time in your life. And so I'm all about automating your life so that you can spend that time that you've saved on something more valuable or more fulfilling.
Oh,
Excellent.
I love that.
So tell me the audience then obviously we know it's people that listen to this podcast in most cases, but where there's those that just want to create cool pictures using things like Midjourney and things like that, but you actually are talking about tools that we do a lot of times in our jobs or in our daily lives. And wouldn't it be great if a little bit of AI helped us with that?
Yes. And one of my, and I'm going to tell a little tale on myself here now, but
Okay.
One of my little cheats is I use Zapier to actually send text messages to my friends and family on their birthdays. Now, that may sound very unauthentic, but if you really think about it, it also sends me a text letting me know that I sent them one, so to remind me if I see them. But, there's little things like that in life where I want to be a better friend. I want to be a better, daughter and all those things. But I may just, as many times it happened to me where I'd get to the end of the day and I'm like, oh, I forgot to call, or I meant to, and I just got distracted. And so it's a way to make sure that I stay on top of those things and, those type of things. So those little bitty things in your life that you want to be a better version of yourself, maybe this can help you. I also use it for my child's homework, a couple days in advance. Don't forget the report is due.
A text message you're talking?
Yeah. Don't forget the, book report is due on Friday. Don't forget to sign the permission slip, things like that.
We were talking about this yesterday a bit, and I thought it was cool because she's using Zapier to automate text messages on people's birthdays to just tell them happy birthday, which is initiating a conversation because at the very least they know, and at the best case is they reply. You have a small conversation on the birthday, and then it works out really well. It feels like it would be impersonal because you don't text them with your own thumbs at the moment. But I would push back on that because you set up a rule in an AI just to communicate with them. And I feel like that's fancy. But then you compare it to the older styles of the way we do it. And I have a list in my to-do app that's like dates, and it's just dates. And so the reminder pops up, and then I've got to take an action off that reminder, which is still being proactive in order to communicate. And then if you compare that to the older way to do it, whereas you write it down in a book or you write it down somewhere, you got to find it, then you've got to take the action, or you got to remember to look at it. I guess that's the best way to put it. And so my way reminds me to look at it, and then your way just does it.
Yeah, and there's another way, which is let your wife tell you that somebody has a birthday, and then you say, "Oh, did you send them something?" And then that's
what did we get them?
Yes, what did we get them? Not saying like Christmas. We talked about this before. Christmas morning is a surprise to me and to those that get the gifts as well. Yes,
the majority of the gifts are also a surprise for me, but that's because like that we share that responsibility because my wife genuinely does like buying presents.
I do too,
and I dislike it.
Yeah, I enjoy the trying to get in somebody's head and think about something that they would actually enjoy. Like I kind of start, like anytime I'm anywhere, I'm looking around, I'm like, oh, that's perfect for that person. So sometimes I'll pick up stuff months ahead.
Now I do the personal Merry Christmas, and I type I have been typing those out individually. But I'm pretty sure people are sending me the blast text message where it's Merry Christmas, and they've sent it like to 1,000 people.
Yeah.
And then I reply back, Merry Christmas. Oh, they've probably just, it's probably like a bot that just did that. And so now I'm a little bit weary of some of those kind of messages. But I now know that if I get one on my birthday from Shauna, then she accidentally found out when my birthday is.
I mean, think about like the relationships that could be saved from this kind of like technology.
That's-
Utilizing
I love it.
this. You're never going to forget an anniversary again. Never going to forget a first whatever.
People make mistakes. And so let me ask you a quick question. Before you put this in place, did you send belated messages, like happy belated birthday, or did you just, we'll wait until next year?
We'll just wait until next year.
Okay.
Yeah.
I can do belated if it's the day after, unless it's my family, in which case I just call and apologize. So
Or just ignore it and
Just
go
pretend
on,
like nothing
and nothing
happened.
happened.
You're
Yeah.
yeah,
Let me go back. I heard podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yes.
So like I'm part of an observer for what you all have been
Right.
creating together. So I'm interested just as much as our audience. What is AI for All, the podcast, going to be?
Well, let's give a little backstory. So you and I have, we've been doing this podcast for a year now.
Yes.
And every single episode has something to do with AI. Like AI this, AI that. Like we just did an episode recently that was just like our data fours, and a lot of it was AI.
Mm-hmm.
And so we were like, how do we talk about AI as much as we want, but not take over the meaning of the Data for All podcast? And it was like, well, we could do an AI for All podcast. And so we're like, well, let's talk to Shauna and see what she has to say. And then that's when she dropped the FemLogic stuff on us. And we're like, well, we're all headed the same direction. And so let's do it. And so by process of elimination, you were out because you're a very busy human being.
Well,
And so we had the time to do it. And we've been working on it so far. Like we've come up with a good idea of like the flow and how it's going to work. And I agree with what Shauna was saying earlier. It's all about improving people's lives, situations, whatever you want to call it, by using AI.
and I can't think of two better people that should be doing that. Charlie, I've told you how your process of how you capture and disseminate and use data is really good. And, Shauna, we've known each other for a few years now, and you always have something cool and new that you're doing, and you're always willing to go out and learn something new. And I love that you're doing it in this space.
Heck yeah.
Yeah, for sure. All right. So what are we doing here for today? We've got to set this up so that when people are listening to AI for All or watching one of those videos where they understand what we mean by AI for All. So Charlie, what is it? Or Shauna, what should we really start with today?
Well, I think the way we want to do it today is talk about some of the big topics that we're running into with AI. Talk about some, we talk about ChatGPT a lot, but there are many, many other options out there to use, and there's many different ways to use it. And then there's people who, businesses that want it for a different use case than a personal user would. I guess that's how you say it.
Yeah.
But the point or the goal of the podcast and the goal of our getting together to do all of this stuff is just to walk people through the process of learning all this stuff. Like Shauna was saying earlier, like how do you sign up for Discord as a part of using Midjourney? Because people skip out on that because they're like, oh, well, Midjourney is just a thing on Discord, but they fail to remember that if you're under 40, you probably don't have a Discord.
That's right.
Or you don't have an instance of Discord. And when you hear somebody talk about a Discord server and you have kids, you're probably thinking about like, oh, that's how all the bad stuff gets to my kids. And so it's two worlds that are meeting in a weird kind of way. And to what Shauna was saying earlier, it's important that we emphasize those pieces, because without that, there's too much Swiss cheese knowledge, if you will, like too many gaps, too many holes where people can't make proper inferences and things like that. And that's really important in these early days of AI, because we're going to be learning stuff that we forget a month later. And so how can you learn as little as possible, I guess is the best way to say it, while keeping up as best you can. And that's that's kind of what we're going to be doing with AI for All, but it's going to be by example, and it's going to be for the purposes of improving people's lives.
Gotcha. So does it make sense then, Shauna, that we start with what is generative AI in general, to really break it down into something simple? And then I know we are going to break down difference between ChatGPT, Claude 2, Bard, even Llama 2. I mean, we're going to start with that. And then are you going to give us some tips and tricks today?
I'm definitely going to give you some tips and tricks today.
Sweet.
Great. Well, let me start with the generative AI, because I heard a good way to think of it. And so when we talk about generative AI, there is a huge data set that's being used. And then from that, you create this engine that can then be used through prompting or through discussion, if you want to think of it that way, or a chatbot to get to an answer. And so I always like to think there's fuel, there's engine, then there's a vehicle. So there's a large language model, there's the pre-trained transformer, and then the application that connects to that. So ChatGPT, GPT-4, and then a data set behind the scenes. When you think of machine learning or, all of the AI that you've heard in the past, a lot of times all we're trying to do is label things. In other words, in the past, we would look at a bunch of pictures of dogs and not dogs, and then we'd be able to pre-train a model to be able to identify if something's a dog or not a dog. That's what we used to be able to do. Generative AI is we do this same stuff. We still train a model with dogs and not dogs. But then in the end, when we're the generative AI, instead of labeling something just a dog or not a dog, what we're actually doing is creating a new dog. And so that's what we're doing when we're creating a prompt, and then it gives us a new story. So new text or a new image in Midjourney. It's generative. So it's creating new based on the data that's sitting in its large language model. How does that sound? That when I heard it said to me that way, that made a lot of sense. Shauna, what do you think? How do you usually think of it?
Yeah, and I would add to that what you said there, but also that you can interact with it. So
Yes.
whereas like right now when you go to like a Google search, for example, you get your data, and then if you want something else, you have to retype the whole thing. But now we're talking about something we can interact with. So if that dog comes up and you're like, I like it, but it's I really wanted, in my mind, it was a brown dog and not a black dog, or so, you can make those adjustments and, things like that. And so that is the real power there, being able to ask that second and third question and not have to repeat yourself.
So
That's a great point.
I actually have experience with this from yesterday when I was dealing with Midjourney for the first time, earnestly for the first time.
Yeah.
And because I had to go get the paid subscription because both Shauna and Charlie have it. And so if they have it, I've got to have it.
That's
And so-
right.
Yeah.
You're
I was in
way
it-
behind,
All the
by the
cool kids
way.
have it, so-
Yes.
Yeah, obviously. So I went in and I would do a prompt, and then you get the buttons where you get to select one, or you can get it to redo all of the options it gives you and all this other kind of stuff. But you can't say, like I was trying to make a dragon wearing a tiny top hat, and the top hat was big in every single image. And I kept on doing it and kept on doing it. And I couldn't prompt it to do what I wanted it to. And I just wanted to be able to say, make the top hat tiny or smaller. And I couldn't do it, but because I'm so used to being able to do that in GPT and other models, that it's frustrating. It feels like it's missing a step, if that makes sense.
The ability to converse in Midjourney isn't the same as ChatGPT.
No.
Correct.
Yeah, and it probably will get there
Yeah.
at some point.
Yeah.
And it does have some capabilities and the ability to emphasize certain things within your statement. So yeah, I do a lot of copy and paste when I'm playing in Midjourney, because I'll do it and be like, oh, I want it to be green instead. And so then I add green setting or something at the end of it over and over again.
That's what I wound up doing yesterday.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like Midjourney is not as intuitive as like ChatGPT. You can figure out pretty quickly. You can just type in a sentence, and even if you spell words wrong, it's going to figure it out. But you have to know the correct prompts in Midjourney. It also is a little bit more, involved in setting it up. It's actually two things you have to have. You have to have Midjourney and Discord, and then connect the two. And so, there's several steps involved. But we're going to go through that. In FemLogic, we're definitely going to have, step by step. Here's how you start, zero to getting it all together and using your prompts and all that good stuff. I feel like the younger generation really likes this. My 10-year-old was all over it. Like, she was obsessed. I put it on my phone. I let her play with it for 5 minutes. And now every time we go anywhere, she's like, can I use your phone?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have the same stories with
That's
your
right.
kids too. You just we just play, like you told me some similar things. Like we just sat on the couch and just made images for a while.
Well, actually, he was in a different town.
Oh, was he?
And,
So you were
and then
sharing on the
we're
server?
sharing, and then we're talking through it as well, because you see, the entire conversation. So it doesn't have to always be an image prompt. So you just go in, and I would say, "So what are you trying to create?" And he would say, "I'm trying to get a shark that looks like a knight to attack a Darth Vader." And I'm like, "Cool." And I would just watch it happen right in front of me. And so we haven't been doing it as much over the summer, but definitely we were doing that in the spring. And that was a lot of fun for sure. And that's why I love this idea of having a server in Midjourney, because now that he can see that thread the whole way through, and you can have it where it can become interactive.
Yeah.
Sounds like a game, like the new
Almost.
the new Pictionary.
There you go. Yeah.
Well,
yeah,
you can play games in Discord too. So I imagine they could figure out a way to do that. I do feel like Discord right now is the limiting factor, because the bots only have so much that they can do as far as interaction goes. But so if Midjourney comes up with their own platform, I imagine that interaction is going to increase drastically.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so are we going into the different basic engines out there?
Well, you were talking about, so let's take it like this. You brought up earlier, you've got the LLMs, the language processors, the codecs. Isn't that what you call the data that it pulls all the information from?
Well, sure. Large language models, think of that as the data set itself. And so large language model technically is the transformer and the data.
Yeah. Okay.
And so, and I always kind of mix up that when I'm talking sometimes. But, because when you think of GPT-4, you think of it as this model. And so what you have is you have all these parameters. It's in the billions, right? But in the end, you build a model. And what that means is you've created these weights for each one of those parameters. And then when you ask a question, it goes and retrieves what it needs with these weights, basically, in the model to be able to generate something new for you. Text, image, video in the future. We're getting there. And so that's what we mean by, so you have a data set. So if you look at any of these, whether it's, again, Claude 2 or Llama 2 and then Bard, they have a data set that they're pulling from. They have their secret sauce in the middle, which is their pre-trained transformer, and then some type of interface to be able to view it.
Okay.
Or to interact.
So the pre-trained transformer is GPT, in like the analogy we used before, and the one you've refined for today is fuel engine car, like chassis. Yeah. And so the fuel is the LLM, so the large language
data
model.
Yeah.
Which is essentially data. So why do they call it a large language model?
Because it's large and it's language, and it's really it's the data and the model combined.
Okay.
Is the large language model that's being used.
Okay.
Am I getting that right?
Yes.
Because it can be confusing.
Yeah. Like with ChatGPT, it's 1 trillion now. It's over 1 trillion data points. So it's, whereas like the closest one to it, I think Bard's only like 500,000 or 500 million.
Billion.
500 million.
Not a half billion, half a trillion, which means 500 billion. Yes.
I don't normally talk in trillions.
Yeah,
that's right.
Yeah, so it's half of what Chat, like as far as this data set. So, I mean, if you think of it as, I think of it as like historical data. Like if the past predicts the future, the more past information you have, the more accurate the future prediction is. And so that's why the large language model is so important. Is the bigger it is, the better off. Now, I do think the other platforms are catching up, and some of that data is repetitive. And once we connect like the web, because right now ChatGPT and Claude, neither one of those can access the web. So if you ask them like who won the Super Bowl in 2023, they can't tell you.
That's without plugins, right?
Right, without additional pieces. But Bard can. And so in some like in Perplexia and some of the others can. And so those tools, once that creates even more power, because then you're combining all of those things. Yeah,
I know. I saw one example where they asked it, who's the CEO of Twitter? And ChatGPT said it was Jack Dorsey, who was obviously before September 2021 was the CEO. Claude, I think, had the same thing, but then, or Claude 2 may have said Elon Musk. I can't remember in that example, but then Bard was correct with the current person who's the CEO because it can go out to the internet.
Oh yeah,
and
because
pull.
I forget they just changed it.
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah. Hubris gave way to like practical reality.
That's right. And I think that's the limiting thing right now. If there's anything that limits ChatGPT, it's the September 2021.
Yeah, but I think it's worth pointing out that they're doing that for a really good reason, though, because they created a walled garden to train. They went from like I don't know how many points they had before, but now they're over 1 trillion, and it just keeps on growing. And so they're building up this LLM in a way that I feel is like establishing trust with the community. That they're not going to use it unethically, or that it's not going to lead to ethical dilemmas. And then I do eventually think that they're going to release it, and that is the plan to just open it up to everybody. But I think they're doing it the right way. Like all the people calling for things to slow down and all that kind of stuff. Like I do feel like they're doing it appropriately.
Yeah, and I read an article about like plagiarism, like if you put in there, write me a Taylor Swift song about like the president, like it will Bard will go out there and write it for you. It'll use the internet, but whereas like Claude and ChatGPT will come back and say like this violates our policies, and we're going to need more and more of that because those are the artists owned items, and we don't want to copyright and plagiarize. And
well, that's a whole separate conversation that we could get into. Is over to like intellectual property. So if I put something on the internet, if I'm an author, because that's one of the big things they tell you in writing with GPT is that you can say write like this person and it'll write in their prose.
Yeah,
and I kind of think that's plagiarism, but you can't train the model any other way. And so like how.
Is it plagiarism if all you do is read somebody's books and then you start writing like them?
Yeah, I think that's a fine line there. Like, because I think that if you're a big fan of a certain author, like J.K. Rowling's, like if you love those books, it's potential. Like if you wrote your own book about wizards and warlocks, that you might adapt that style.
So I get what you're saying, but that's like a byproduct of learning or being human is absorbing other people's idiosyncrasies, styles, like whatever it is. But to intentionally go in and just blankly say like, write me a Mark Twain poem,
but it didn't write you a Mark Twain poem. It looked at Mark Twain poems and came up with its own idea of what it would be. Well, I'm just playing devil's advocate.
It's an interesting conversation because if you say that like say I'm still alive and not some dead author that is not going to get paid, but say I'm still alive and I'm trying to make it as a writer, and I've got a unique style, like and I'm being successful with it, but then other people are using GPT to write just like me. Mm-hmm. I feel like I would feel disenfranchised in that moment, but I don't know what you do about it because you can't stop it.
It would be very hard to prove, like, I don't know. It's a difficult, it's a challenging conversation.
Sounds like AI for all is going to have a lot of amazing conversations for sure.
And like as a parent, that's one of my fears is that my child accidentally plagiarizes something using a tool like this because they just didn't know.
Yeah.
And I don't want that, I'd hate to see some, drastic consequences come from that.
Yeah. And just to clarify the number of parameters. So right now, GPT-4 is at 1.7 trillion parameters. GPT-2 was 1.5 billion, and then it went to 175 billion for GPT-3. And I think what they're thinking for GPT-5 is going to be 170 trillion or something like that.
So we got 10 times the space.
Yeah. And of course we don't know, we're all guessing, but it's going to be a lot more.
The way I like it here, it was described to me as when it first came online in November of 2022, it was a 7-year-old. In like June, it was a 15-year-old, and it's growing exponentially. So just like we didn't really understand it in November when it came out, we are still learning and growing. So
I feel that adoption is going to. We'll get to this in a little bit, but adoption has a big part to play in that because we're still way ahead of the exponential growth curve, like, and everybody adopting it. Yeah. And that's surprising to me because, like we obviously see the value in it and stuff. And I'm blown away by the intentional lack of interest is the best way that I can think of to put it. Because it's literally, you're literally falling behind.
But I mean, I think of it as the new calculator, right?
Yeah.
But if you were like years ago when the calculator came out, if you weren't doing math on a daily basis, did you care about the calculator?
No.
Probably not.
Yeah.
And I think the same thing is happening. So if you're not
That's
like
a good analogy. I like
using it like in a day-to-day basis,
Yeah.
you're like, what does it matter to me? Like, you know, like I'm pretty sure the electrician that works on my house could care less.
Well, and they don't know it can
Right.
help, right? And we all know that every person can benefit, and that's what you're going to show, and you know,
Yeah.
because you can use this in your daily life just as much. All right, I'm going to ask I'm going to break down the 4 basic engines just so that we get some idea. So we're going to talk about Bard. We'll just say ChatGPT as the term for that. Claude 2, and then Llama 2. Okay. And I'm going to give some basics on each one. We've talked enough about ChatGPT, and that is an OpenAI product. Bard is the product from Google. Claude 2 is from Anthropic, is the company. And that was from people that left, I think, OpenAI.
Yes.
And so that's almost like it's an offshoot, and there's some reasons or some things that they've got. We'll talk about that. And then Llama 2 is a Meta product. And so those are the 4 big ones. Is that correct? Am I missing any?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. And you know, if we're talking to the average person, ChatGPT does what they need, right? Why would you want to look at any of these other ones? Let's start with Bard. Why would you use Google's product other than you're a Google person?
Well, and you know, there's a lot to be said for system integration if you are a Google company and everything's on Google platforms. But it also does connect to the web, so that gives you additional power that the others do not have at the moment. You know, like I said, it's a game. Like 2 months from now, it may be a completely different game. But for right now, they have an advantage in that aspect.
The other thing I think that they are doing really well is multilingual translation,
I
and
bet,
so
yeah.
it's by far the best. And so you can take code from Python that has Korean comments and say, turn it into our programming with US comments, and it does it.
Oh, that's cool.
And so there's, I think the multilingual stuff, they're way ahead of everybody else. Theirs is based on, their model is called Palm, and it's, I think, Path Linear Language Model, and it's their second iteration. And so that's kind of their engine is called Palm 2 right now. And that's kind of where the Bard thing is. So I'd say, yeah, it's going to be web. And then also, if you're really big into anything with translation, Bard right now gives you the best options.
Yeah, and it's Google Translate is the clear winner
Yeah.
if you've ever used any of those translation tools, in my opinion.
I've done live translation on my phone because I have a Pixel phone and it's got the translator on there. It's so good.
And you're just trying to take smart English and turn it into Charlie English, or no, of course. Anyways, terrible joke.
Well, that's why I did this scoffy kind of laugh.
Yes. Well, I am required to have 2 really bad jokes per episode. I've got my first one done.
One down.
Got it done.
Check.
All right. Claude 2, on the other hand, is really interesting. And if you go, you can read a bunch of white papers on it. They have this thing called constitutional AI. What do you know about it, Shauna?
You know, I've only played around with it a little bit, but I do find it very interesting as it was developed by people. It was founded and developed by people that were on the original ChatGPT. So they know the ins and outs. And so my theory on it is they took the best of both worlds and fixed some problems and came online. And so, you know, from what I've seen, it does a really good job. It actually does a decent job with translation. I do think Bard is better, but it's doing a decent job with translation. I feel like that it is, you know, it's soon to be web enabled as well. And so that's my understanding. And so I really like the Claude. I feel like the interface was much easier to use. And so that's been one of the ChatGPT is basically just text, you know, like if you've seen it, you know, if you're familiar with old school chat.
Yeah. There's a whole array of products that are just meant to make the UI better.
Make it pretty. Yeah, make it pretty.
Yeah.
And so basically Claude is coming out and doing, you know, that with ChatGPT. They're making it pretty.
That's cool.
And so, you know, but I think that they're catching up fast. You know, I can't tell a difference between a trillion, you know, 1.7 trillion and, you know, 500 million or 500 billion. I can't really tell the difference in the data that it's producing.
Well, and they're trying to emphasize safety and ethics. They
Yes.
have this triple H approach of helpfulness, honesty, and harmlessness. And that's part of their Constitution AI. I've got the link to the paper that describes that, and they literally have the white paper online that you can go and get right from their website. And I think that they're trying to be as transparent as possible. They are using reinforcement learning, and they call it red flagging, where you want the human to be the one that checks for, from an ethical perspective, and then it's safe. But over time, they expect AI to be doing the checking. And that, because obviously humans can't go in and check every prompt and every request. So right now it's pretty much, you're trying to get it to where they're training the AI to be able to, be the safeguards. And that's what that paper is really, or really what constitutional AI is referring to.
And another thing about Claude that I thought was interesting is I read that it hallucinates significantly less than ChatGPT.
Okay.
And so if you're not familiar with hallucinating, meaning that it gave you a bogus answer that doesn't make any sense. And so
And is that 3.5 or 4?
ChatGPT 4.
Really?
Yeah. So it's saying that it's hallucinating less.
That's cool. So one of the things I just saw in here about Claude is that it's got 100,000 token limit as opposed to GPT's 16 on 3.5 and 8,000 on 4.
Yes.
So that's pretty cool.
Yeah. No, that is true. And Claude 2 is free. 3.5, ChatGPT 3.5 is free. Bard technically is free. The only one right now that you have to pay for is GPT-4. Yeah.
And so I think we are going to see a lot of prices come down and things like that, because as they start, they'll all start charging it at some point for probably enterprise level.
Yeah.
But I think we are going to see prices. Yeah, there's going to be a price war there on, very similar products. Free is my favorite term.
Free. Yeah. That's
Free.
Free.
You caught me off guard with that one.
Free.
Yeah. Just so everybody knows, Shauna's going to be a great AI for all host because she's one of the most frugal people that I know. And so, I enjoy that.
And last one, Llama 2, which is a Meta, which is Facebook for those out there. And why would you want to use Llama 2? Or just some of the nuances?
So for Llama 2, I actually applied for the, it's still in beta. So if you're using it, they have a big disclaimer on it. Claude 2 actually has the disclaimer too, where it says, we're still in beta. You could get inappropriate answers. But I haven't actually gotten my approval yet. So it just came out and I haven't gotten it.
I know, me as well. We do have a friend, Jason King, that did get it and is using it. But
that's cool.
What you get is you get the ability to download the model.
Yeah.
And it gives it to you in 3 different sizes. One is 7 billion, one is 13, and one is 70 billion. So you can actually do things locally. Yeah. So you're not, if you have sensitive data and you want to run it against a large language model, you have the ability to do that without putting your data out into the world.
Yeah.
And I see that potential being like in the health, in the Nashville area, we have a lot of healthcare, organizations here, and HIPAA is something that I constantly hear, like they're very concerned with AI and HIPAA. And so Lambda could potentially be a solution to that. If they can run it locally and keep control of that data, then they could still use the AI. Absolutely.
Everybody I've talked to from the business side of things, like they've been cautiously using GPT and some of the others to write some code, but nothing that was proprietary. So every enterprise or every business in general should be worrying about their information being used to train the AIs, and then it going back out onto the internet. And so, rightfully so, because you don't want to lose value in your product and what you built up. And so everybody's like, well, what's the on-prem? What's the on-prem? And there's been, like the last time I saw a viable on-prem, I think it had 15,000 points or whatever, and it was really small. But it seems like with Llama 2, you're going to be able to go big on-prem, and so you'll host this in the cloud for sure. But still, you're going to be paying for your own compute power and all this kind of stuff. However, this may be one of the things where you actually bring the compute power for these types of queries back on premise, because like NVIDIA, for instance, is building a GPU that's dedicated to LLM AI type usages. And so that's going to be coming out in the very near future. And so it's going to put the type of like GPT Bard AI in each enterprise's hands, but they're going to be able to customize it and train it for themselves. And that's going to be very neat.
Yeah. Now, Llama 2, I think when you download, it's only 20 gigs. Remember, you're not getting the data. You're getting the model. And the model's based on the weights, based on how it was trained from the data. So it's not like you're downloading 70 billion parameters and the data, but you are getting, again, those weights. So according to Jason King, again, he said it was about 20 gigs. And so it can fit on your laptop.
But those parameters increase compute power, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And your computer has to be able to handle it. And you're right. So you would probably, if you're using it, especially for an organization, your computing power would need to be probably cloud-based.
Yeah. So the point with the GPUs from NVIDIA is to get AI in the medium-sized businesses' hands and potentially into the small business hands too, because the enterprise is going to spend the money when they come around to it. Like they'll find, they'll be able to afford it. But the medium and small businesses is where it's gonna hurt, because you can't spend $150,000 on 10 different machines that you're running your AIs off or your LLMs off of.
Yeah, and contrary to popular belief of it's going to save us a ton of money, it will save you some money, but you are shifting money too, because you have to remember you're still paying for the service. Yeah. You're going to pay for that on-prem. You're going to pay for that additional cloud storage. So there's definitely some cost associated with this. It's not a free flip a switch and we're going to save,
Well, right now it's about $30 per compute hour on the enterprise level. Gotcha. And so I imagine that, and it's business talk. So $30 per hour of compute is it's an operational expenditure because you pay it every single month. It's not going away. And if you're in the business of finance or finance for your business, you don't like that. You like capital expenditures that you can amortize over time. And so the setup is going to be preferable for the way that big businesses work. And so these on-prem models or these locally hosted models are going to be scooped up pretty quick. And so in 2024 and 2025, I would expect a lot of businesses to be spending a lot of money on infrastructure, which is silly because they haven't really done that since like 2012 or so.
Yeah.
Well, I say that some industries are behind and they're spending money on stuff in 2023 that they should have done in 2012. But if you're up to date, you're going to have to reinvest in your infrastructure.
Well, nobody wants to spend money until it's broken, and then they're like, get it fixed.
That's right. All right, let me ask this last question on the differences. In ChatGPT, there is 3.5 and 4. I have to pay for ChatGPT Plus, which gives me GPT-4.
Which is worth.
Which is worth it, you're saying. Why is it worth it? Is it because the answers are so much better, or what? What are some reasons why you'd want to go from 3.5 to 4?
Well, and one of the big reasons that if you have the free version, it's always annoying. If too many people are using it at once, it'll come back and say it can't answer your question. And that's just really annoying.
Okay.
Like, because it's always when you need the answer really quickly.
I don't live with peasants, so I don't know what that's like.
Yeah,
you know me. I don't like to spend the money if I don't have to. So I'm like, no. Like, so, that's one of the things that did drive me to pay for it is that that kept happening. And so that's one of the things. But, Charlie's got some other
I'm obviously joking about the peasant thing.
It's all good.
Yeah.
I like it mostly for the plugins. Like when it initially came out,
you can't do plugins for 3.5?
No.
Okay.
You know that though.
I'm asking the question for clarifying for the audience. Yes.
Sorry. So when you upgrade to the subscription-based GPT, you get access to 4 and plugins, and that for me is a game changer.
And code interpreter.
Yeah,
awesome.
Just the PDF reader is worth having.
That's very true.
If you have a PDF, and we talked about this a little bit in the previous podcast, but if you have a PDF, with non-proprietary information, because you don't want to just upload it to the internet, you can upload it and then ask GPT anything in the whole thing. It's like, so I did that with a PDF of a scientific paper and asked it all the questions, and it would show me, it would say, here's the answer, and here's where it is in the paper, and then here's something where it says something different, and there's where it is. And so it really helped me get to the soup and nuts of the paper, instead of just like wondering like where it sat and finding that one little detail after reading 20 pages.
Yeah, I like it for my kids' school stuff, and so they give you a packet of paper, and then I'm like, when's the book fair? When's the whatever? And so I can just in natural language ask it those questions, and it'll pull it back versus me flipping through like 10 pages of paper back and forth trying to figure out where
Again,
it's.
so smart.
Whoa. Hang on. How are you doing that?
So you can, well, if you have like Zapier or one of the other tools, you can just load it in the PDF in, and then you can just ask questions about it there.
You were talking about flipping like physical pages.
No. It's like, I'm just saying, like, I load the whole PDF of all the information that the teacher gives us when they give us or you could scan it and make your own PDF if they just gave you papers. But I'm saying they give us a packet of papers, and then there's usually a download as well of that information. And so like, I used to keep that packet of papers next to my desk, and then like somebody would ask me a question like, when's fall break, or when's the book fair, when's the school play, and I would have to like scan through all that stuff trying to figure out, okay, when is it? And like now I can just ask it the question, and which is super nice.
So how do you keep that thread up? Where do you just bookmark the thread?
Yeah, you can just bookmark it, or you can just save that.
So you've got a school conversation that you just go back to every time you need a question?
Every time I have a question.
That's so
can
cool.
Can I just ask this one question? So the last time you were on, you cost me money.
Wait, how?
I'm sitting here with my Oura Ring right now.
Right, yes.
And how much are you going to cost me today?
much
So
is it gonna cost
Zapier,
you?
I have to go get, and we'll talk about it. It's not cheap.
No.
And I hope there's not like 8 more things I have to get after today because of everything sounds so cool.
Well, and when I talk about Zapier, this is how I justified it. So like if I can save 15 minutes a day, that comes down to about 5 hours per month, which is 60 hours a year. So what is 60 hours a year of time worth to you?
For me, 1 hour. And no, seriously, obviously time is the only thing I care about these days.
Yeah,
Right.
your free time is valuable. Not from a monetary perspective, but you just need it.
I just want free time. Yep.
Yeah.
And I don't know what to do with it, but I
figure
do
that out.
want it. Darn it.
More work.
Yes.
But more things about what you want to do. Like I always think, like, don't waste time, on, get that little mundane stuff done and out of the way, and spend time on things that bring you joy.
So
right.
I need to talk about this Zapier stuff some more because
we want to set it up for her top tools. I mean, we're going into Zapier as the first one.
all right. So as long as we're coming around to it, I'm fine.
We'll start with Zapier. Is that a good one to start with?
Yeah, I had Zapier. Like it was like 1 and 2 are kind of like the same to me. I'm like they're 2 different things, but Zapier is really.
So let's set it up. Shauna's top AI tools.
Yay.
I like it. Yeah. No, but so I think we did a good job of explaining some of the different engines that are out there, and so let's get right into it. And I'm dying to hear about Zapier as well, if that's the one you want to start with.
Yeah, Zapier is a fantastic AI tool, and essentially what it does, you can set it up to create workflows and like automatically do things for you. Like I was saying with my daughters, like I can upload a PDF of all the school calendar, and then I automatically have Zapier create calendar reminders on all my calendar automatically for all those things. So then I don't have to type all this. I mean, I used to spend like an hour every year, like school year comes up, and I would type in all this stuff, and and now I don't have to do that. Now that just automatically goes in there through a PDF, and I say, create it, do it. And, it's a little more involved in that. And through FemLogic, we'll go through some of those step-by-step videos on how exactly I do that. But things like that save a ton of time. You can, all the school schedule, you can do like, if you have like I said, birthdays, anniversaries, all those things can go in there. Even like, one thing, I have it doing and is when an employee says, I want to take off of work from this time to this time, just go ahead and like send the response that says, approved, and then log it in my calendar, things like that. So that, like if your kid asks you for something, you can automatically, so you can set up those rules similar to what you would do with, if you're familiar with Outlook rules and things like that. Yep. Only imagine it on steroids if you could cross-platform and use many different tools at once.
Like if this, then that.
It's exactly what it is.
That's exactly what it is. If then this, that. So imagine your whole life like that, where if you could like, okay, well, every time somebody sends me, things I often forget are, subscriptions subscription reminders. Or my favorite is when we do the 30-day trial and I forget to cancel the 30-day trial.
Oh, yeah.
And you get
I know
charged
you
for
all
a
have
year.
done it. I know you all have done it.
I set the reminders, but again,
set the reminder.
I have to take action when it comes.
Yes. I mean, you can only go so far with this. Like it won't do it for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. But, stuff like that. So those are all things that Zapier can do. And like I said, 15 minutes a day is 60 hours a year. That's real time to me. And so my goal is just to, every time something comes up that's repetitive or seems to like weigh me down, that's not really adding value, I try to think, can I put this in here? Is this something that can be done that way?
Well, I think you've said it before. If you have to do it twice, it's time to automate.
Right. I mean, I'm very, things that are inefficient drive me crazy.
Yeah.
And so this tool is like right up my alley. And so I used to be, or I still am a huge fan of Power BI and Power Automate and the Power Platform there. And you can also do these types of things in that tool, but that's a very expensive enterprise platform that the average individual is not going to use.
Well, I mean, it's more affordable than it used to be because Office 365 really changed like our access to all of that. But it's still like a pro tool.
It's a pro tool, and it's not super intuitive either.
Yeah.
You would have to know, you
gotta get in it.
You'd have to get in there. You have to be a little more, like I'd say, your superpower Excel users can probably handle it, but the average person is probably not they're going to get frustrated and quit. So.
Anybody who understands if-then statements can get it from a concept perspective, but then it's just learning the tool after that.
Right.
Yeah.
Like that's how we manage our data is the Power Tools and Flow and all that kind of stuff in the Microsoft world. But that's all like reactive. It's all reactive stuff that we do for a specific reason, and then it only goes so far. And so like you're finishing that last mile, as we've talked about. Like you're taking the action with AI as well, and I like that a lot.
Yeah. So Zapier is one of my favorites. So
and Zapier has been around since 2012. So it's not new. Yeah, they've been around this isn't a new AI tool. They just have put it. And so it's been a competitor to If This Then That, except more for business, where If This Then That, if anybody knows, now it's IFTT, is more of like I get something in an email and I send it and it can go off into a Dropbox, or something like that. If every time I get an attachment, have it go there. So little things like that. Well, Zapier has been set up to be a lot more robust, do a lot more, and it's been doing that for years, but you had to pay for it. And so I've always wanted to have a reason to spend that money, and the way you equate it to time, darn you, that makes a lot of sense. And so now it's just that it's taking AI and enhancing its product is really what it's doing.
Right. It's integrating with the AI. So that's really the power that we're going to see with all this, generative AI and things that are coming online, is combining it with the tools that we already have.
Okay. So you guys have danced around it quite a bit. How much is it?
If you go to the website right now, it is for the starter pack, which would be for any individual, don't you think?
Yeah. That's all I have.
It is $19.99 a month, so $240 a year.
That's what I mean by like
$20 a month.
Is it worth $240 for you to get 60 hours back? I mean,
in a year, yeah. You got me thinking now that you're talking about it in that kind of context, because that's how we operationalize at work too. It's like we fret over 3 seconds per phone call if we're trying to shorten the time, because 3 seconds, 20,000 times a month, 12 times a year, it adds up to a lot. And so the concept of like qualifying what's worth and what's not is like, that's a really good question. Is 60 hours to save tasks, or to save the 60 hours on one task worth it? And then think about how many other tasks you can save little bits of time on too. So
first of all, I think you have to go for the starter pack because you want a multi-step zaps. And that's what they call them, is zaps. Because a single step means you just, if this, then that, and you don't get multiple things. How long does it take to really get up and to run? Because obviously there's a learning curve.
Yeah.
Is it 1 hour,
I would
10
say
hours?
within an hour. Like I set it all up within an hour, and now I can do it really quickly. And once you get one set up, you can copy them and make adjustments and things, and you can put like I can put it on my calendar and my husband's calendar at the same time, and so it doesn't necessarily so things like that, and there's a lot of useful as I call it, like people ask, how do you get so much done? I'm like, well, I hack a lot of my life. I automate everything I can
And
and
that,
outsource everything else.
yeah. And that $240 is, you can write it off as taxes and stuff too, right? Because I imagine you're using this to improve your work life
Oh,
and things like that.
absolutely. I mean, I have a full-time job. So this, FemLogic AI is just something that I do as my little side hustle.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely, yeah. And I even just the simple things like I love Day One. It's my I use that to catalog my life with pictures. And wouldn't it be great if I had some way to automate that instead of it being a manual process? And I'm like, oh shoot, I haven't put anything in Day One in like a week.
Oh,
and,
yeah.
If something, there should be little triggers that allow me to automatically post.
In the future, you'll be able to set up something that says, anytime you see my face as the foreground in a photo, put it in.
That's right.
There you go.
Put it in there.
Yeah. Now I did have one with if this then that back in the day, where if I ever put a photo into a Strava run, so Strava being the app I use to do things, it automatically then went into Day One, and it would put that picture and it put how long I ran for. So. And that was kind of cool to do that. And I turned off my if this then that stuff a while ago because I wasn't keeping up with it. But it sounds like I'm ready to go back to Zapier.
Yes.
I'm interested now for sure.
Okay, we ready to go to the next one?
Yeah, let's do it. All right.
Okay.
So my second one on my list, in my top, is Mixo.io. Mixo.io.
Yeah.
Okay.
And so what that is if you're somebody like me who like the ideas that wake me up at night, where this is a great business idea, if only I had $1 million to spend or whatever number it is, those things I have, like, business plans galore. If you've ever been to my house, you've seen my stack of business plans next to my desk because I used to actually print them out. Now I just keep them digital. But
that's not a metaphor. That's literally.
There's business plans.
Okay.
On top of business plans on like how I think, very entrepreneurial brain, just, not very deep pockets.
Yeah.
I understand. I know what that's like.
So, yes.
That's her digital transformation is that stack to femlogicai.com, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, we're working on it. But so this Mixo.io, what's so awesome about it is you can actually just like start typing in an idea. Like, Charlie and I were playing with it and we were like, all right, what if I'm a dog walker for, elderly dogs and, like us in the Nashville area? And it came up with in like seconds, like 15 seconds, it came up with a website. We had a email list that you could sign up for. It had, of course they weren't real, but it had some people that were, had given us, feedback on our.
It had placeholders.
It had placeholders for feedback, which, of course I would, make adjustments to that, but it gave us a mission statement. I mean, it like wrote it all out in a matter of seconds. And so I was like, that's brilliant. So the idea being you could actually put that out there and see if people are interested in your idea before you go out and you buy all the things for your business and set it all up. I mean, for about $300 a year, you can get this website out there and in like seconds.
Wow.
And then not only that, but you've got an email list of data. So let's say, people aren't interested in my elderly dog walking business, but then I have a list of people that maybe a vet might be interested in, because here's a list of people who have elderly dogs that probably are going to need vet services. So so I thought that's super interesting. And so I've that's one of my addictions. And sometimes I just like to go out there and plug my idea in and see what it comes up with.
So I did see that you can technically create HTML and CSS in ChatGPT, Bard, all of them, and it gives you what looks like a 1990s website with basically just blocks. Yeah, and it just says idea 1, idea 2, idea 3, and so this is taking it to a whole nother level.
This is 2 or 3 sentences, and it builds your business for you in a website.
Wow.
And so it's really, I'm impressed. I was like, this is pretty awesome.
Yeah. I mean, not to take us too far off the thing, but like our buddy Matt Wolf, who we've never met, the YouTuber, like you go to his website. What is
He's
it?
my friend too.
AI, all the tools, or
future tools, future AI tools.
Future AI tools. Yeah.
It looks like he wrote it in GPT then, because it's very blocky. Not
it
fancy,
is.
but that's one of the things we were talking about. Shauna and I were talking about yesterday is that it exists and it's functional, And that's awesome because he probably didn't spend hundreds of hours building it.
Yeah, I have I struggle with the letting perfection halt the progress, and like people are like, you're never going to have it all figured out. You just put something out there and just build from that. And so that's what this is for. Put something out there and get going.
We've talked about that concept before. Like, do you start, like, do you write the first draft and let AI spruce it up, or do you let AI start it and then you spruce it up before you put it out there?
I tend to do like kind of both directions, I guess. Like it depends on what it is. Like if it's a lot of times, like if I'm writing like a recommendation letter for somebody, I will ask it to give me an outline, and then I'll just be like, okay, I'll put these things in there about this person, and then I'll plug it back into the ChatGPT and say, proofread it, and it'll come back and maybe make some adjustments, and then I'll read through it again and make sure it's the way I want. Yeah. But I always, either way, I'm making adjustments like constantly on it. I never take anything straight out and paste it. Yeah.
And isn't it just a different mentality? Like I think about websites, back in the early days, I had to create it all myself, right? And that is what it is. I'm talking about like the 90s.
Yeah.
And these days I've used Squarespace as my example. And so there's examples, and I would use their examples for inspiration for my site. Now we're literally using something like this, Mixo.io, to be the inspiration. So, I mean, like, I don't know if I would use somebody else's. Like I'm somebody that has been doing websites for a while, but I would love to get inspiration.
Yeah.
And I don't want to spend 15 days, it seems like, going through examples anymore. I'd rather just say, help me out and get me started. Oh, I like the way it created that and how it puts our videos in a certain spot if we're creating a podcast website. But at the end of the day, I'm probably going to take control of it.
Yeah.
Yeah. But you have that skill set and I don't. I don't know if you can code HTML, but me not being able to do that, it empowers me to accomplish something that I couldn't before.
Well, and I think about like the electrician in my house, like super nice guy, probably doesn't have the HTML skills, just guessing, maybe.
It's very judgy of you.
Very judgy of me.
Yeah.
He may be great at coding. I don't know. But, people like that, my dad, has a construction company. I know he could not, come up with his own website, but this is the way he could in just a matter of seconds and get something out there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Very, very true.
It's increasing. Like I keep on thinking about it. Well, we'll get to the concept of a hyper production or hyper producer in a little bit, but the amount of stuff that you can do as a unique individual is just growing exponentially day over day with all of this new stuff that comes out, and it's just absolutely crazy what an individual, me with certain skill sets that I have and others that I don't. Like what I'm going to be able to do.
Yeah, I think about even like like I've said, I'm a big fan of Power BI, but there's a lot of DAX coding and things and like R and things like that are beyond my skill set. But now with like the tools here, ChatGPT and stuff, I can get that to crank out what I want it to do and create my own visuals and create my own, models there. So really that opens another door, in there, like something that would take me weeks, I can now do in like, a few hours.
And DAX and R languages, right?
Yes, DAX and R program.
Coding languages.
DAX is specific to.
It really just is getting rid of barriers. In the past, I couldn't create fancy art because I didn't have the ability, and it took away that barrier. I only have so many hours in the week, but if I use Zapier, I might be able to get some back, and it removes that barrier. I can't create my own website because I don't have those skills. And then Mixo.io breaks down that barrier for me. Yeah,
and it does a really good job, I think, with just, getting your idea, to me, sometimes when I see it, I think it did a pretty good job for us. So
it's like you ever work in an environment where you've got a collaborator and they're just building you up, and then you build them up and you build them up. And it feels like GPT and AI is just a built-in collaborator. Like you're guiding it for sure, but it'll help you get over the humps or through the tunnels or out of the woods or whatever you want to call it to accomplish what you want to accomplish, because it'll always, or at least in my experience so far, it'll always give you an option, if that makes sense. If it's like, you can't do it like this, but you may be able to do it like that. Do you want to try that? And it's like, yeah, well, we might as well try it, because it's not like it's going to cost me 2 hours of time just to figure out what it looks like, it'll do it instantly. And so I can go through so many iterations very early on in a way that, like, the minimum viable product is going to be much, much better than it has been in the past, much quicker.
Yeah. And like, as somebody who has worked in a, product role, I know that MVP and, when things have to change, that's sometimes weeks and weeks of time that gets rearranged.
Absolutely.
And so to be able to do it in seconds or, give somebody alternatives really quickly is amazing. And so,
and it's also going to be exhausting because everybody else is going to be doing things quickly. And now I always have to do things quickly.
Yeah.
And I, Charlie and I talked about this the other day about, like you were talking about super producers and, I've always been that overachiever. It's just kind of the person I am.
She's been a super producer before.
I just mean that's just, I don't know how not to, there's only one speed for me. So it's fast forward.
So you,
there is no slow.
Yeah. You and other Charlie share similar traits in that, like, downtime feels like it hurts you from my perspective.
It's very hard for me to relax. And like, I do better when I'm,
busy
full
minds.
Speed ahead. Yeah. Full speed ahead.
That sitting around thing. I just don't know how to do it. I want to be that person.
I can't, like, I sit, you just got back from a European vacation where you're, it's like almost an adventurecation because you're moving around a lot. And I try to picture you two just like lounging on the couch, spread out and stuff like that. And I can't do it.
Oh no, we definitely like Netflix and, watch, like we binge watch like, Cobra Kai and, stuff like that. So, we definitely have.
With the laptop
moments.
also?
Yeah, I was about to say,
there is definitely multitasking involved.
It doesn't count then.
I know.
I have a very hard time like just sitting and watching, like going to the movies. I used to love to do it. And now I have a really hard time because I can't,
I definitely watch less shows than I used to because it can't capture my attention in the same way. But we've talked about this a little bit in the past. Like, I can't multitask. If I'm watching a show, I can't have my phone up. And if I have my phone up, I can't watch a show.
And I'm so used to multitasking. It's like like I almost feel like when I'm not multitasking that I'm being lazy, that I could be doing more.
That's too much. You need to chill. You need to let yourself
and
go.
you aren't. And the truth is, when we say we're multitasking, we're not. We're multi-switching. And so we're paying attention to our computer, then we're looking at the TV, then we're going back down. But I put on a YouTube video this morning, and I just couldn't sit there and watch it. I had to go grab my laptop, and I'm like, I just can't sit here and watch that video.
We're actually getting into stuff that I actually did go to school for, because when I was in, like, my degree's in psychology, but the last couple of years I specialized in attention and perception, and we had some really good professors and stuff like that. And one of the big arguments in psychology is, can you attend to two things at once? And I may butcher this, but Treisman's model of attention is that quick switching back and forth, but there's a pocket in it for automatic stuff, because if we can't do two things at once, how can we talk and drive? And so it's
certain things you can do.
Automatic functions are separate from, like, you don't need to attend to those things actively.
Yeah, I agree. Like when I'm doing, if I am coding or something like that, I really need to focus on that. I cannot have distractions. But yeah, there's few.
But you can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Yeah, I can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Gotcha.
If it needs to register in my brain, I have to be single line of attention.
That makes sense. Yeah, there is different types of attention. I can drive and listen to something, and I actually comprehend it better when I'm driving or walking than sitting there. My attention is better when I'm moving or concentrating on something else, and that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, in graduate school, I used to run on the treadmill and look at my flashcards for study. So that
probably did better. Yeah,
I did. My neurons were going. I had to go. Yeah,
that's why I listen to books.
So
I
do too. I'm a big fan of audiobooks. Yeah,
that doesn't surprise me at all. Flashcards while you're on the treadmill.
Charlie, look what you're getting yourself into. You had me, and now you've added somebody that is even more so.
I think it says something about my the folks I keep around me, that everybody around me is outworking me by a lot.
Oh, I don't think that's true, but we'll let you keep that perception going.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I appreciate it because it's true.
I definitely have my like lazy moments and stuff, but.
Yeah, I mean, I get where you guys are coming from, because if I'm not productive, like I've had an experience recently where I've been quasi static at work, like no new projects and stuff like that, and it's driving me crazy. Like I feel like I'm not being productive.
Sure,
but I'm in a moment where we have to sit still for a little bit while we make the proper choices, and it's just driving me crazy because I feel like we're losing out on all the potential gains we could have, and that distresses me a lot. And it stresses me a lot, and so I have to learn to mitigate that by being easier on myself. And so when I hear you guys talk about that stuff, like just how you feel when you're not doing things, I'm just like, I know the feeling, but mine's not as acute as yours.
Well, and like that's where I get on these, like, that's where I get on this AI. If I have spare time, I'm like, oh, I could learn something new. Let me go out there and see what, like explore this or explore that. And so, like Midjourney, that's my number 3 on the list.
Let's go to that then.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I've got Midjourney on there. Up until now, my job has not really involved graphics or anything of that nature. And so I really didn't see a need for that for a long time. And then, Charlie Apigian over here was like all about, the Midjourney. And I was like, all right, I'll play with that. And then I got kind of sucked in and I was like, okay, this is pretty cool. I can make it do a lot of things. And then what really got me and made me put it number 3 on my list is my 10-year-old daughter. We're at a restaurant and she's like, can I play with your phone? And I was like, she's like, what are you doing? And I was like, let me show you. And so I showed her how to use it on my phone. And that kid for an hour, made graphic after graphic and she had a blast with it. And I realized this younger generation thinks about this stuff differently than I do.
Yeah.
It's not something that's in my day to day, but it is. And I think about, she's always on her little Apple Pencil and she draws on her tablet and, all her little friends do the same. And, they make skins on the Roblox and stuff like that. And I was like, wow, this is really a tool that's going to take off. It is a little more challenging to use, but I don't think that's going to be a barrier for them. Because once I got it set up for her, she was like,
not for kids.
I got this.
Yeah, and when you say set up, you're using the Discord app on your phone, correct? Yeah. So if you have Discord, when you get everything set up, you get Discord on your phone, and then you're literally using Midjourney.
The same servers, same instance there. So it had all my past stuff. So I just handed her my phone, and she went to town. And so I was like, I can live with you, being on technology, doing AI stuff.
Yeah, I like to think of it as. We're adopting a new tool, and to them, it's just the way it is.
Yeah.
It's like they live in a world where they're from a very young age, they're going to be empowered to do a lot. And, again, that brings us back to why we're here is we need to get this stuff out there and standardized in such a way as by the time they're adults, then they can iterate their own, or they can make a better iteration of their culture and society using these tools than maybe they could have otherwise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, and I'm looking at my Discord page right now, looking at all the different ones that I've done. If you look at any of our art, so any of our thumbnails for our podcast or our YouTube videos, those all have a Midjourney image in the background. So pretty much every one of them these days. And then if I am doing something, I go back and I go, oh, that was a presentation I did. So I always have somewhere where I'm showing Midjourney maybe to senior citizens or to younger kids. And I have the one that I showed my mom, and what I put in is Chewbacca sitting in a coffee shop drinking a latte, Hanna-Barbera style. If you know what that is, that's Flintstones and all the others with bright colors. And then it created my image for me. And, it took me 4 different iterations. Yeah. And then things in there that they keep adding, like the ability to zoom out, zoom in. You can, you're given 4 options when you have a prompt, and then you can select one of those options and make variations of it. So that's the V1, V2, V3, V4. But if you like the one, you can select it as the ultimate, and then it creates the HD version of it. Yeah. And then you can download it, you can copy it, you can zoom out on it, and you can do a bunch of other things. And then there's a lot of different settings in there. And those are the dash things. Yeah, you can tell I really enjoy this. I've watched a ton of usually teenagers in YouTube showing me all the tips and tricks, and I've got a lot of them now down pat.
Yeah, you're much better at this than I am. But yeah,
been doing it for a while.
Yeah. I feel like the younger generation, like the video games and all that is so prevalent in their lives. That's the number one question when I talk to, high school students, about what careers they could have in technology. The number one question is, how do I become a video game programmer?
Yeah. Well,
I want to make video games.
So do you keep up with where the AI is with that right now?
Not really. Video games aren't my thing, but
okay. well, to me,
I'm a nerd, but not that nerd.
they're well, I'm nerdy for video games, but they have it to where you can automatically generate assets, which are like the trees and houses and cars and all that kind of stuff in the game, and they've got rudimentary like descriptions that can be built out. Nothing looks extremely polished, but you can get AI to build you pretty easily like a room or a level to walk around in with certain basic, like movement restrictions or parameters or whatever you want to call it. And that's just the beginning. I feel like, and it kind of works the same way as like the movie industry or the movie industry would right now, in that it's moving that direction. It's got a way to go, but there's enough runway for those industries to figure out how to work with it well, because there's just no soul in it right now. Same thing with music. There's no.
Well, if we constantly copy other people's sound, then we have no original sound.
Mhm.
And so the whole point in music is those original sounds are what are successful for the most part. There's some exceptions.
That's a good. So, I mean, from a philosophical perspective, like if you fed all of our feedback, theoretically, if you could do that, and it spit out the perfect movie, is that just as good as if a human being had come up with it? Like if it genuinely is entertaining, what does it matter if AI did it start to finish versus a person?
I mean, I guess if your goal is to judge whether it's entertaining or not, it doesn't matter. But if you're looking at it from is it a right or wrong on an ethical scale of copying someone else, then that's another question. So you're asking two different questions there.
Okay, so let me rephrase.
Should you be snobby if you're watching something that was AI generated versus a human? Is that what you're saying?
Should we care?
Yeah.
Well, and I think you're looking at also like think about with cartoons when cartoons went from computer animated to hand drawn, and so I think there was definitely some snobby there. Well, it's not a real cartoon.
Oh yeah,
because it's
digital
not
art.
Disney didn't draw it on a piece of paper, therefore it's not real.
The same conversation's been had with digital art and music and all that kind of, like not music in the traditional sense that it's digital, but like EDM, like electronic digital music. Like that's the people hated on it because it's like you're not playing an instrument, so it's not real music. Guess what? I don't care. I love it
enjoyment
anyways.
out of it.
Yeah.
It doesn't
And they're
matter.
sampling other people's music in a lot of those cases and things. So yeah, and then you if you only knew the behind the scenes, or if we knew the behind the scenes of the big movie production companies, those are executives making decisions a lot of times. So what is going to grab us? Instead, if it was just create a great story, it might actually be better than what we're getting.
Yeah, but would we like it?
I don't know.
I mean, that's to me, that's the ultimate question is, do you like it? And if you like it, I don't think it necessarily should matter as long as it's not disenfranchising somebody. So that's to your point earlier where I was asking two different questions. I don't think that we should be able to plagiarize, but I don't know how you use AI in a creative way without falling into that category at least a little bit.
Yeah, it's particularly if we're using it historical data, which is all basically, But the same thing could be said for, like you said, reading a book or an encyclopedia. Like, when I was a kid, you had an encyclopedia.
That's right. And here's one thing I do not want to get rid of. There are songs I listen to that literally move me.
Yeah.
And I hope that doesn't go away. So you're right. Songs do have soul.
Yeah.
And it might be that it's just nostalgic. It reminds me of when I was 18 listening to Beastie Boys. And so when I hear No Sleep Till Brooklyn, that kind of thing, it might just get to me. But there's a lot of new stuff that when I listen to it, I'm like, wow. That's really good.
So I guess a good example of that, like if I listen to EDM, like I'm listening to it for the beat. I'm listening to it for, like, maybe there's some lyrics in it that are kind of cool and stuff like that. But if I were to listen to a hip hop song with lyrics in it, I literally would not listen to something that a machine did, because hip hop's not about it's not about
You like the story behind the lyrics.
Yeah, it's not just about being poppy or pop music or making music in a popular kind of way. It's about, here's my experience, here's how I learned to articulate it, and here's how it goes with music. And so when I'm listening to Kendrick Lamar's most recent album, he's telling a story through that whole thing that's an accumulation of his experience as a human being. And that's what touches me in that. It's not like, I mean, the songs are awesome, and every song on that album is amazing, but it's literally what he's saying that makes it that much better for me. Because I could listen to it even if the lyrics were crap, which is why I listen to Kanye sometimes, or did. Never had a good lyric in his entire life, at least in my opinion. But he's a catchy producer, so his music sounds fantastic. But like, then you go over to Kendrick Lamar, and his music sounds fantastic, and it's deep as an ocean. And that experience in music I feel like it's unattainable, because I know if AI wrote, like I could listen to it and say like, oh, that's great if AI wrote it, and then you tell me AI wrote it, and then it means less to me after the fact, because I know it didn't come from a genuine perspective.
When it's talking teen angst and it's never been through teen angst.
Right.
So it's like lip syncing versus actual singing.
Exactly.
Oh,
You're
Milli Vanilli style.
Yeah,
there you
there
go.
you go.
All right. I think there's always I'm okay if AI takes over elevator music, right? That kind of thing. All right. I know we went off on the music thing. I don't think we have a music one on here. What's your next one?
Not my area of expertise. Yeah, my next one is contentdetector.ai. And it's actually two. And then, so, like I've taught it. Charlie was kind enough to let me teach at his school.
I didn't. You earned the right to teach at Belmont. That's right.
Yes, to teach at Belmont. And so, but that was right before ChatGPT came out. Yeah. And now, I think of professors and teachers that, as students turn in papers, they're going to have to put them through some kind of detector to figure out if AI wrote it. As we all have, there's varying degrees of AI detectors, and I really like this contentdetector.ai.
Okay.
And so what you can do with that one is you can paste in there just copy and paste the, paper, paragraph, whatever it is that you think might be plagiarized, or the whole document. And it will give you a score of what percentage it thinks that AI wrote it. So it'll say it's 90% chance that AI wrote this. So, I think that's a really useful tool. Of course, in contrast, the AI community has come out with so if you are the cheater, the person that wants to, use it, so you can also go out to ChatGPT, -1.com, and the word minus written out. And so what that will do is and you can paste that same document in there, and it will actually replace the most commonly used generative AI words, and then the detector will not be able to detect it. Yeah. So this is going to be a constant battle. I feel like, unfortunately, we're going to have to rely on the honor code to a lot. But, as a teacher, I would definitely put everything in the content detector, and then, probably, have conversations where I felt like, you were a D student last week and then you turned in an ASA. Maybe we should talk.
Yeah.
Things like that. So, but I do think those are worth mentioning, because also as a parent, I want to make sure my kid's not doing something they shouldn't be doing.
Yeah, but to the parents and teachers out there, just be mindful that just because it says it's 90% likely, that doesn't mean that it is.
No, that means that it used words that it's saying that are commonly used with AI.
Yeah.
So AI uses the most, basically it's predicting the most commonly used words when it's giving you an answer.
Yeah.
And so it's definitely not 100%. We wouldn't want to make any final judgments on anybody or anything without having a conversation, but just know that those tools are out there.
Okay. So I just put in, I had to do it while you were talking.
You had to do it.
So I went into ChatGPT and said, write a story with 400 words about a dog and a penguin. You want me to read it? No, I'm just, yes, so then I put it into contentdetector.ai, and it gave me a score of 53.85 and says likely human.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And, and that's one of the things I know OpenAI got rid of their detector because they were not very accurate. Yeah. It's got a ways to go, but it did highlight sentences. And I'm assuming that means it's probably sentences that came across as AI.
Yeah.
So at least that, if it did just that, that's big for a professor.
Yeah.
Right.
I feel like maybe the longer it is, the better it is to detect. So.
It actually says that. It needs to be at least 250 words or more, and the more words, the better. Right. So limiting it to 400 was random, but maybe if that was 1,000, maybe would do a better job.
Well, and yeah, like you said, like I just want to make sure people know that those detectors are out there. I mean, I think there's going to be a war on that as far as back and forth.
Yeah, for sure.
It's going to be the equivalent of kids, back in the years ago used to trade, test questions. You tell everybody, you took the test first, and
shenanigans are always going to be there.
There's always going to be kids trying to work the system.
Yeah,
we're adults.
Well, I think as professors, we need to change what we consider as the way to measure your competency.
Yeah.
And how we do that, if it's with multiple choice questions, that's probably, not the ideal thing. I will say I'm taking a course right now, and I'm getting the response back in my homework. And this is, like from a very prestigious university, one of their online courses for everybody kind of thing. And I'm looking at these answers back, like the feedback, and I'm like, nobody wrote this. It just looks like it's a ChatGPT. It's like, I love your observation that pointed out this, and I'm like, oh, come on, no person actually goes into that kind of detail. I mean, it's like 3 pages for my 500 words.
Again, that goes back to, like, would you rather have no responses, or would you rather have the generated responses that are not from an individual? Like, it clearly means that you felt like you were like ripped off in a way. You're like,
a little bit, and it's like, you know what? I don't care anyways, because it's a non-graded course in the first place.
Degrees.
Yeah, that's true. I just want to learn.
Yeah, no, I think the content detectors. Yeah, you're right. It's like they probably are running that through, especially if it's a free course.
They're definitely gonna be updates to that.
Totally.
In the very near future. So I wouldn't get too stuck on it.
And I think that as education, in my opinion, like instead of trying to teach people not to use the calculator, we need to teach them how to use the calculator.
Yeah, that's right.
And so, like we just need to assume that they're going to use it and show them how to use it. So, like it's not going away. And I think we can agree on that at this point.
Okay. So 10 years ago when you were in college.
Oh yes, 10 years.
That you talked about running on the treadmill, looking at your flashcards. So if you were in college right now, what would that look like?
I would have them on my phone. I would have the same flashcards, which actually goes into my number 5, which is I really like this app called Wizdolia. And
notice she's getting good at the podcasting thing. Yes. She's making you move along, Charlie.
No, that was I set that up.
He was leading it. He did a good setup. He like lobbed it up, and I was like, okay. So Wizdolia is an AI tool where you can load a PDF, and it'll actually make flashcards out of like whatever. So you can load a vocabulary list, or if you want to learn Spanish and you want to like load all that. So whatever you want to load in there, it'll actually build flashcards for you, and you can just run them through on your phone. And so that I think is super awesome, because I'm always looking for a new certification here or there. So that's a nice way to do that.
That'd be great for my daughter who's going through occupational therapy and has to learn all the bones and something or things like that. That's because she does do flashcards.
And it does a really good job, and not just like saying, here's the word and here's the definition, but it'll actually create like questions around it. So it'll actually, give you more than just it's like a test question versus just here's the word and here's the definition.
So let me ask you a question. Like, have you used Wizdolia to learn something personally?
I'm actually working on something. So I'm working on an AWS certification.
So as you're going through this, be mindful, because I've got a question after the fact. Does the writing of the flashcards help imprint some of that knowledge? And if you skip that step, does it impede your progress potentially?
For me, I feel like it's something about that like 3x5 like little block.
Just the repetition.
Yeah. And so that's always worked for me. And so I used to carry around, like I had these little, like, I had several of them in my backpack, these little pockets for each class. I had flashcards because I'm Charlie's so shy and laughing. I was a nerd. I came clean on the beginning.
Like you probably know firsthand like what it's like to share questions, because I imagine you're the one who like, here's all the questions that I got right. And you trust that I got them right, so you'll use them. Or maybe you were ethically pure and didn't do that. But
right.
My wife was the flashcard, like organized like that, and she would get the questions from her friends, like, what was the test about, and what was on it specifically?
Oh, I was always like, no, dude, you study yourself, like you do. I worked on.
You want to hear like old school? I was at a meeting 2 days ago. And the person sitting 2 seats over had his really nice analog planner. So, paper and pen. He had 8 different pens, all a different color.
Oh yeah, I've seen people. I've known people that have done that color coding. Yeah.
Didn't you do that?
Oh yeah, but I did it in 1995, and I didn't have
Get that guy an iPad.
An iPad. So I walked up to him and I said, there's this thing called iPads, and you can do different colors. He goes, I know, I just can't get it. And he was not. I'm not talking about a 70-year-old. I'm talking about somebody younger than me. He's like, I just like to write it, and I love color. And I'm like, okay, if you're willing to walk around with 8 pens.
8 pens and go through a lot of paper.
Yeah. And so there's still some old school people out there that love their flashcards and their color-coded whatever.
It took me a while to move from the check. I love a good checklist and checking things off my list.
Yes.
So, but it took me a while to go away from the paper to putting it like in an electronic form. And so now I'm used to it, but it did take me a while. Like that was an adjustment.
What is your to-do, how do you do to-dos or task management?
Trello. So I use Trello mostly.
That's right.
And I like how Trello integrates with Slack. And so if you're working with a group of people, they can automatically put a notification in there, letting them know that something's been changed and things like that. So I feel like Trello's my
Trello, and that's like a Kanban board.
Yeah.
Is that what that is?
It has different. You can adjust the look and the feel of it, but it's a Kanban board where you can
They still have the little dog, the little husky dog.
I haven't seen Husky Dog.
I haven't seen Husky Dog.
Oh, there used to always be a husky dog. That
I like dogs. I'm missing out now.
I never used Trello because we were in the Microsoft world until we started using Trello for the AI for All project. And I like it. It's like Microsoft Planner. What do you call it? A something board?
Kanban.
Kanban.
Yeah, that's a Japanese thing, right?
It's a product management tool. Like basically Kanban.
There's your husky dog. See, I wasn't kidding. There was a husky dog back in the day. I wonder if he's gone.
Like you have Scrum and Kanban and all that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Japanese thing, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
I never heard this. I never heard of that.
Kanban basically that you can only work on one thing at a time, like realistically, or I think you can get up to 3, I believe, but don't quote me on that.
I gotta look that up.
It just puts things in columns.
Yeah, it just puts in columns and you just move it over.
That's right. When you're done, move it there.
Work in progress or done. Basically follow up, something like that.
All right. Okay. Did we get all 5?
All right. So that was my 5, but I do have a 6th one I want to mention because I really like Perplexia. So in competition with ChatGPT, Claude, and Bard, I really like this Perplexia because I've had a lot of times and it's free and I feel like it's more user friendly. And so I've been using it quite a bit in place of ChatGPT. So it's one of my favorites as far as same concept, it's going to produce the text for you, but I feel like it does a pretty decent job and it produces a little different, more unique answers, I feel like, than ChatGPT.
You said Perplexia. Flavor? Is it perplexity.ai?
Perplexia. Perplexity. Yeah, that's it.
Okay, Perplexity.
So perplexity.ai.
Yeah, perplexity.ai. And so I really like Perplexity. One of my favorite thing about it, and the reason I like it, it works just like ChatGPT. Put in a sentence or two, and it'll it'll do from the prompt you give it. It'll give you answers, but it also goes out to the internet, and then it gives you the citations from where it got the information.
Oh, nice!
Yeah,
and so I really like being able to click on those links and see where it got the information because I'm like, if it got it from the Onion site, I know it's completely fake. If it got it from New York Times, probably pretty solid.
Yeah.
So I want to be able to see so it does the citations inside of your work there. And so I think that's a really unique feature that I have not seen any of the others do yet.
I like that.
And is it from a certain company, or I'm looking on their website right now and I'm not finding it. It's very open sourcey looking.
Yes, it's as far as I know. I'm not from I actually found it. I was watching a bunch of YouTube videos and somebody mentioned it, and I went and looked at it, and I was like, oh, I know.
Gotcha.
So Perplexity.
It looks really simple.
It's very simple. I mean, it's not going to do your complex coding or things like that. But if you're just looking at it I've been using it for writing recommendation letters. Recently, I've had to write quite a few of those for people going into college and whatnot. And then just emails. General emails to the team. Things along that line.
Gotcha. So Perplexity.ai could cost you money if you go for the pro account, but it looks
Right.
like you can get more
Yeah.
than enough from the free account.
I've just been using the free account, and I've been
Okay.
completely happy with it. So
And Wistolia, free, or is there a paid for that one?
there is both a free and a paid. So there's a limit on the Wisdolia of how many flashcards you can have.
Okay. And then Mixo, there is a cost if you get to a certain level, or is it?
So if you want, so for Mixo, if you want your own URL, so if you want it to go to like femlogicai.com,
Okay.
then I have to pay for it to go there. But they have like a generic URL that you can use, and so you can use their generic if you just want to show people like your website and what you've got.
That's
Excellent.
cool.
Yeah. And so, and then I'm assuming contentdetector.ai right now looks like it's free.
It's free. As far as I know.
Midjourney, again, same thing. If you want the free version, it's not worth it because it gets caught in the generic Discord
It's like a
page.
giant
So you're going to
data
want
dump.
to,
Yeah.
if
You
you're
have
going
to
to
be
do it, you got to want to do it.
You have to be really good with Discord. So if you're opposed to paying the $20, you can make it work. You just can't be doing a lot of work out of it.
That's right. Okay. Well, I a lot of really good ones. And then you guys have one more topic you have here?
So do we have enough time to talk about hyperproducers or the concept of
Sure.
hyperproducers? I'm asking, like, Jeremy, we're not staying too long, are we? Cool. Just so you guys know, I didn't hear anything in my headphones. I just made it up.
I was like, imagine.
So-
Okay.
So Shauna and I were talking yesterday, going over the show notes and stuff like that. And then, so something that's kind of baffling the both of us. I don't know if it's in the same way or for different reasons or whatever, but it's just like, why would people right now just not necessarily not use AI, but kind of proactively stay away from it? Like, because I've come to talk to several people at this point who not only are not interested in AI, but are kind of like too cool for it, for lack of a better word, and they're not seeing any value in it or anything like that. And so then we kind of got to riffing off of like, well, what's going to be the the moment or the spark that kind of changes people from not being aware or in tune with AI to like coming over to the dark side, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
And like I thought about the concept of like a hyper producer, and we mentioned it earlier. It's like as we become enabled to do more and more as individuals, and those of us who are in it, like are we gonna build skill sets that can't be outmatched by somebody without AI? And I believe the answer is yes, because we've been saying it all along. Like your job's not going to be replaced by AI. Your job's going to be replaced by somebody using AI. And so in thinking about a hyper producer, like why would a hyper producer stay in a static job? Like why would I be able to do 10 times the work for the pay that somebody else is getting who's not using AI? And like I could think about a couple of things. So one is you're just comfortable only working a couple hours a week and making a lower amount of money,
Mm-hmm.
or you don't, and you quit and you start doing gig work. Gig work meaning
Contract.
Yeah, just contract
Mhm.
work. Like a company has a project, and you go onto a board or some sort of exchange. You pick up that work. Just think about it like Fiverr, but for business operations, or
Yeah.
like whatever you want it to do, actually. And so if I can do whatever I want to, then why can't I get paid to do whatever I want to? And so to circle back around with this, if I or Shauna or you become a hyper producer, or anybody becomes a hyper producer, and other people who are not engaged with AI start to see that and they start to feel left behind, I feel like that could be one way that instigates like a mass like movement towards AI and its everyday use and whatnot. And then
Yeah.
Shauna came up with I say came up with, but she got around to like, well, once it's on your phone, or like once it's a part of your digital assistant. And so you want to expand on that?
Well, and I think you took it from like people are going to be like, I have to do this to keep up.
Yeah.
And I looked at it as, okay, I think it's going to be more of like, it'll be like something fun that people want to play with. And so that's why I think that when the iPhone stepped into the phone market, they made it fun. And so I think when we come up with things like Midjourney and the ability to make our own video games and things like that, that is what's going to cause I have to have this. It's going to be that's fun.
Yeah, I don't agree with either of you.
Yeah. Let's hear it then.
I think it's boiling the frog kind of analogy. We're not going to know AI is happening to us, and then one day we're just always going to be using AI. And I think that's with the certain generations. Certain people are not going to one day say, today I'm going to start using AI. I mean, I don't mean that in a funny way. I mean, it's kind of like every person that's older will Google. But 20 years ago, they would have never done that. But slowly over time, my mom stopped printing out her emails, and so she was able to, but it took this gradual approach. And I think what's going to happen is, like games and, images, 98% of the world doesn't care, right? What they just want to do is go through their daily lives for what they care about. And then all of a sudden, that product that they were using now has AI in it. And it works a little bit quicker. Okay. I can make a better decision now. And so they're incrementally going to start using it. What's probably going to happen is people like us in the beginning are going to get that head start, and they'll probably catch up at some point. Now, it might be 20 years from now. It might be a year. But remember, we're only we're not even a year into ChatGPT. And we're already going, why is anybody wanting this? Well, the adoption curve for the internet was a lot longer than a year.
Yeah. Let me probe that idea for a second. So, can we say it took 20 years for the internet to take over?
Take over?
Take over. So like 95 to 2015.
I would say 10.
Yeah. I mean, definitely by the time the iPhone came out.
Yeah, but okay.
Well, there were still catalogs. I guess there was still the paper versus internet.
High-speed internet changed things, though. Like, everybody had access to, cable. So that was a turning point for me.
That's about 2015 to 2018, depending on where you're at. But when did the internet really start? Like, when did people start using the internet? And I would say the mid 90s is when people started getting
definitely
access.
I remember, I was in college when I finally got access to, my dad had it for his business, but we weren't allowed to use it. But I remember so I was in college and I remember going to the computer lab and being like, how do I get on the internet? And so he showed me, and then I was like, okay, now what do I do?
Okay.
And they were like,
go back to playing solitaire.
Yeah. They were like, that's it, that you're on. That's it.
So it took about 20 years for the internet to take over, give or take, and then we can, we could argue all day on that. But then cell phones, from the moment the iPhone came out in 2007 to when it was pretty much in every household, was about 5 years. So how many years do you think? And people adapted really well to a cell phone. And so if you think about why people started rotating over to cell phone or smartphones instead of feature phones. I feel like it's gonna be a similar situation because the people were literally being left out. You can't communicate in the same way on a feature phone, which is just like a standard T9, as you can on a smartphone, and you're not gonna be able to interact with reality in the same way if you don't use AI as opposed to somebody who does. And I feel like with the way it's moving, because we talked about the training nodes or whatever you call it went from 1.5 billion with 3.5 to 1.7 trillion, and then we've got another 10 trillion to go, but that's not going to take 5 years.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that generational kind of I talked a whole bunch without even asking anything. Sorry. So do you think that people will be able to not pick it up?
No, see, that's just it. It's kind of like anybody that says, I'm not going to use the internet today, they have no choice. Everything is tied to the internet.
Yeah.
Every app, everything that you do, your lock on your house in a lot of cases, everything is tied. It's just going to be, I think the biggest adoption is going to just be because, and it's just everything that you're going to have is going to have some type of algorithm that helps make it a little bit smarter. Mm-hmm. And it's not that everything's using ChatGPT. It's going to be small incremental, like mini LLMs, kind of that are hyper-focused on helping you with something in particular. Mm-hmm. And you're just not going to know the difference between what you were doing in the past and this. I think it was a stark difference between print and internet. And I'm just using print as what we were before, or analog versus digital.
Yeah.
Digital now to AI, I think it'll be blurred. I don't think we'll know that we're using AI. It's just my phone just asked me if I want to go to this one place because it's on my calendar.
Mm-hmm.
It just does it, and I'll be delighted, but I'm not like, finally I made it to the AI generation.
I can see that. Yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying there. I can totally see that. Yeah. Well, and like technically Alexa and, all those things,
That is AI. It's just been, if it's more, it's not this generative.
Yeah. We're talking
Right.
about generative specifically.
Yeah.
I can't see a world where if you're employed that you don't start utilizing AI in some way, shape, or form in the very, very near future.
But I think you're also looking at it, like, I think the three of us here, I'm always looking at what's next, what should I be on the, that 50,000 foot view is very important to me, but I don't think everybody thinks that way. I think some people just kind of, they go to their job, they do their job, they come home. And so that's going to be the big, this is going to be a first mover game. And so that's where there's a lot of opportunity here for people to, jump in, be a part of the AI, movement. They could, you could easily, bump ahead, especially the younger generation, I think, that are coming out and trying to make a name for themselves. This is definitely a way to do that.
Well, okay, so let me run this by you guys and see if this jives with you. So as a business, G Squared does mobile sports. We're a help desk. We use a knowledge base, which is basically a data set, to do a good job as a help desk, and it's one of our like it's a pride and joy to us is to be good with data, and not just the numbers data, but the informational aspect of data as well. And so as we look to the future, which sure that we're looking to the future now, but the future will be here pretty quick. Yep. And so in 6 months, I can take G Squared from a people-centric help desk to an AI-centric help desk with people support. And like, we'll just say we've got 30 people on the help desk now. I won't need 30 people on the help desk after. So what are they going to do? Am I going to let them go? I don't think so, because I think I've got other jobs for them to do. Because if I can decrease my revenue, or if I can increase productivity without decreasing revenue, then what am I going to do with that extra revenue? Am I going to put it back into the company? Am I going to change, or am I going to reassign some of these jobs to grow the business in a better way? Are some of these jobs going to naturally transfer to trainers, revisioneers, or whatever you want to call them? Like the people who work with the AI to make sure that it's telling people the right thing, that the data looks good, and all this other kind of stuff. And so if that's the case, where I could do that in 6 months, like, what's going to stop a Fortune 500 business from doing that same thing in a 3-year period once they determine that they can actually accomplish that? Because, like, enterprise projects are way, way bigger than, my 50-person company projects for sure. But the money savings is always going to drive the pursuit, so to speak. And I feel like everybody's going to be feeling that pretty soon.
Yeah. And, there's a difference between what I think is the personal adoption versus the business or corporate. Like, corporate has to do this.
Yeah.
They have to go out. The person, though, is going to choose one app or another, and they're going to, over some point, they're going to be like, oh, the one that's AI powered or has these other aspects to it, I'll choose that one. So I think there's a difference there. I will say this, though. This is the part that I think is the initial scare. Is it's what we, you can call it the dumbbell approach or the dumbbell phenomenon, which is there's going to be things at two ends. There's no middle class anymore. The middle class has to make the decision whether to embrace or not embrace. And if you embrace, you get to go up the food chain on salary. If not, you're going down. There's going to be jobs at both ends. There's not going to be a lot of jobs in the middle.
I agree.
You do?
Yeah, and we've been seeing that for years, and
well, it's been happening.
I've worked for several Fortune 500 companies, and over the years, I've seen what I would call the middle management, the directors, senior directors, managers that kind of merge into one lane. And so, however you title that, but those jobs are merging into one lane, and so people are preparing for that already. You just won't need as many people in that management lane. It doesn't make sense to have managers reporting to one. You have one direct report, and then everybody's a manager or a director or whatever, however you want to put that. So I think we are already seeing that.
Yeah, this sounds like a great topic for a new podcast called
Yeah.
AI for All.
Yeah, AI for all.
There's so much to talk about, and there's so much to keep
Yeah.
up with. And so to reiterate, that's what Shauna and I are looking to do, is be a trusted source for the goings on. So you don't have time to go spend 4 hours a week learning stuff, but if you come listen to the podcast once every couple of weeks or once a week or whatever we decide on, and then in addition to that, the FemLogic AI stuff, then you're gonna be flush with material to keep you up to date.
Yeah, and we plan to give everybody, at FemLogic, we plan to give everybody all the tools they need to take that next step in their career if that's what they want to do, or be prepared, or and have those building blocks so that you're ready to go. Like when your company does shift that direction.
Could you say we're trying to produce hyper producers?
We're trying to produce hyper producers. I'm trying. Yeah.
Ooh, all right. I love it. Well, anything else? We've taken up.
We need to get out of Jeremy's hair.
That's right. No, I really thank you. I'm excited for what you all are going to be doing. I'm going to be obviously a fan, and I love that we've got this little group now that we focused on data. This AI thing happened. We started this back in August of 2022. ChatGPT didn't even come out yet, and it just changed everything. And I think this is the right approach. It's not for us to take over data for all. It has its home and love, and data storytelling still needs to be our part. And as part of it, it definitely is AI. But for us to have the focus with people like Shauna doing that, because Charlie, nothing against you, but he'll still be the other Charlie on the AI for All podcast, I'm assuming.
We'll see about that, because when you're not there to defend yourself, you are whoever I say you are.
That's okay. You're welcome to do that. Shauna, any parting shots?
No, I'm just looking forward to, carrying on this conversation and putting some good content out there. And please come listen to us.
Excellent. And Charlie, excited, I'm assuming, for this new venture.
Heck yeah. We were 2, and now we're 3.
I love it. So for that, again, thank you all. Please subscribe to the Data for All podcast. And by the way, if AI for All is already out there at this point, or if you're listening to this after the fact, please subscribe to both the AI for All and Data for All podcast. You can find us on dataforall.io. That's data, the number 4, all.io. And for the 3 of us, as part of this, I'm Charlie Apigian.
I'm Charlie Yielding.
And I'm Shauna Sprague.
And until next time.
It's a good ending.
That's fantastic. I'm so glad you feel like you're going to you at the last minute there.